You're watching Mugen TV RPG Haven. Experience a fantasy like no other.
Hey guys, it's MugenLord here, and I'm back again with another video. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to let you guys know that I really appreciate the love and feedback that you guys have left with my previous video, which is Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, and how Square Enix had pretty much screwed that game up, causing it to fail really miserably. So if you guys are interested in that and curious about the downfall of Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, definitely check out that video. So let us dive right into today's topic. Today, I want to talk about a particular title that a lot of fans have been waiting for since 1995, and Square Enix had decided to pretty much grace us with this game in early 2020, and that game is Trials of Mana. And Trials of Mana is pretty much a remake of the original back in 1995, and this is a perfect example of a remake being done right. And in this video, I want to talk about why I love it so much and how it's a perfect entry point for newcomers of the series. So before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know that there could possibly be potential spoilers. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you guys just leave once we get into the story aspects of the game, or you can skip over the story aspect. I'll probably leave a marker to let you guys know. So let us dive right into it. For those of you who don't know anything about the Mana series, the history of Trials of Mana, pretty much after they released The Secret of Mana, which was my first introduction to JRPGs, and I will definitely will make a separate video for that, because this is the game, or Secret of Mana was the game that really got me into JRPGs. So let's move on. So in this case, Trials of Mana was a follow-up to Secret of Mana, and this was an interesting case because magazines like Nintendo Power, we had Game Informer, and Game Pro magazine, they pretty much had revealed the game, and this is back in 1995. And once they revealed the game, I was super excited because I remember holding my Game Pro magazine, looking into the magazine. I seen all the new characters, and this was pretty much like, in my eyesight, like, I enjoy Secret of Mana. So we finally getting a true follow-up to Secret of Mana with Trials of Mana, and I couldn't wait. And it was showing off that the game is going to have different cast members. This is also going to have a class system in the game. I said, yo, sign me up for this. But for some reason, by this time, I've already been playing games like Chrono Trigger, Mario RPG, and even at this time, the PS1 had officially launched. So I even had a PS1 and playing some of the early PS1 JRPGs as well. But I just couldn't wait for Trials of Mana. And for some reason, the game had never released outside of Japan. Never released outside of Japan. So, you know, as time went along, we had received other games within the Mana series, like Legend of Mana, Sword of Mana, Children of Mana, but no mentions of Trials of Mana. And I think as a community and as a fan of Secret of Mana, I was truly confused to why we haven't received anything or any mention from Trials of Mana at all. But like all communities, it didn't stop the fans from emulating the game and translating it, and there were plenty of different translations. Community hard at work to make sure people was able to get their hands on the games in some way. And I even tried it on the emulator as well, and enjoyed it from what I played on my PC at the time. So out of nowhere, if we just fast forward, just out of nowhere, the Mana collection for the Nintendo Switch was announced in 2019, which included a fully translated Trials of Mana for the first time, an English version of Trials of Mana. And you know me, I lost my mind when I heard that, and I went out and I pretty much pre-ordered it because I had to get my hands on this game. Pre-ordered the physical copy because it's the first time we actually want to get a legitimized commercial release of Trials of Mana. But it wasn't even over yet. It wasn't over. After they made their announcement, out of nowhere, they decided to show us a trailer to a remake of Trials of Mana, which was going to release for all platforms in 2020. Yo, you should have saw my reaction. I wish I had a video of my reaction. Even along with my brothers, we lost our mind. Not only that they're giving us the collection with Trials of Mana included, they even remaking this game in all of its modern technology glory. And I was like, sign me up for this. So I was hype as hell for it. Now, I want to get into why I love it so much. And the reason why I love it so much is that this game also proved that fans, in fact, will play a complete one-to-one remake, because the game has sold 1 million copies its first year. Because there's always been an argument, especially with Final Fantasy VII Remake, that, you know, this is always get this excuse, you know, no one wants to play the same exact game. What's the point? It will be boring. You already know everything about the game. Why would you want to replay it or whatever? You know, we want something fresh and something new. But this game right here was a perfect example of fans love the game for what it is. They're not just going into it just to say, hey, I want to just, you know, that this is boring, I noticed that. No, they just love the game. That's why fans, they love every aspect of the game. Gameplay, story, everything. And this proved it. 1 million copies were sold its first year. And this was a 1-to-1 copy. 1-to-1. And it was enough that it revived the series and was able to create a new entry. There's been a new entry announcement. This game sold so well that this series has been revived, and a new entry to the Mana series is in fact happening, and also a new mobile title is being released as well. All thanks to the fans going out there supporting the game. They wanted to play it. So the thing that is so great about this is that Square Enix was able to preserve the game's integrity while giving the game a new facelift, which is the graphics. The graphics is charming, it's colorful, it's bright, it's vibrant, it's beautiful, and he was also able to modernize the gameplay functionality to meet modern gaming standards. So it made it was able to modernize it for fans who've been playing JRPGs for a long time and came accustomed to accepting a lot of the changes, and also newer fans or a newer generation of players who play JRPGs who are familiar with modern standards to games. They're able to jump into the game. The game also has voice acting in it, which the original didn't, and they were able to keep the core foundation of the original intact, which allow original fans to enjoy the game while introducing the series to a new audience. So for most people, this was an anticipated game since its reveal in 1995. I know I was excited for it. I've been waiting for so long for this damn game, and I'm finally was able to get my hands on it and actually play it. And the good thing is, they released it on multiple platforms, so everybody was able to get a chance to experience this game. The game was released on the PC, Nintendo Switch, and the PS4. Sorry, Xbox users, I don't know why they didn't want to release on the Xbox, but you're able to get on the PC. Now, the thing is, here's why I'm excited, because I didn't know which version of the game to pick up, because they did release a demo, which I really appreciate what Square Enix does now. Square Enix releases a lot of demos for their games before the release. They did it with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hopefully they'll do it for Final Fantasy 16 when we get closer to the release date to that. So they did a demo for Trials in Mana. So the thing was, what me and my brothers decided to do was we all were going to play on a different platform, so we can do a video about it and do a comparison. So I got the Nintendo Switch. I played the Nintendo Switch demo. My brother Keo Lancer and DX Strike went for the PC and the PS4. So we all played our demos on a different platform. So which platform do I suggest that you play the game on? Well, that's the beauty of the game being released on multiple platforms. Whatever platform that you have, you play it on it. But if you had to choose, of course, if you have a Nintendo Switch, of course the Nintendo Switch is the weaker version. But it's all about the gameplay, and the game is fun. Yes, it has a game run at 30 frames compared to the PC and the PS4, which runs at 60 frames per second, which is gorgeous, which is beautiful. But if the Nintendo Switch is the only thing that you have, and plus the upside to the Nintendo Switch is it's portable. You can play it on the go. So if you aren't worried too much about frame rate or graphics, grab the Nintendo Switch version, because at least you can go anywhere and play the game any way you like. So that's the upside about it. So I suggest to just pick the version that you enjoy the most. So when we dive into the game itself, how does the game play? What's the story like? And the thing is, I had to talk about the story, and I also had to talk about the gameplay, because the story and the gameplay is definitely intertwined with one another. And what do I mean by that? Well, with Trials of Mana, this game took an interesting approach to storytelling in the form of its gameplay. So when you start the game, you essentially have your main characters. Now, there's like 6 main characters in the game. You have Duran, Angela, Charlotte, Kevin, Hawkeye, and I believe Riaz, if that's how you pronounce her name. I'll post her actual name up in the video itself. But you have 6 characters. Now the thing is, when you start the game, you have to essentially pick a main character. The main character is where the story will mainly focus on. And then you have to pick your party members, your secondary character, and then your party member. Now, this mechanic right here pretty much encourages multiple playthroughs, because depending on what characters you play up, the story will play slightly different from one another. Each main character has their own motivations. The end goal is to eventually meet up with the masters, with the Mana Sword eventually. But every character has their own motivations of why they're on this journey with one another. So when you pick your main character, once you pick the main character, you pick your other 2 party members. Now the thing is, you start the game just only with your main character, and then you eventually meet up with each of your party members. Now the interesting twist of what they've done with this game is when you meet one of your party members, they'll have an interaction with each other, and then the game will actually ask you, do you want to play their backstory to show you what they've been doing before they met up with your main character, which I think is a pretty cool, interesting twist that they really done with this game. So this also encourages multiple playthroughs as well, so you'll be able to play through everybody's backstory leading to your main character. And then when you meet your third character, the same thing commences. They ask you, do you want to skip it or do you want to play through their backstory, which I think is pretty cool. It's pretty fun. Now the thing is, what this game has also revealed about this gameplay mechanic is the simple fact is that you can play with any characters paired up together. Now the thing is, the characters that you don't use in the game, you will eventually meet them in the story. They just don't become party members. You will encounter them, you will help them along the way, and then they continue on with their journey and their story, because each character has their own main villain, or they share the same main villain. And this is where I come to where the story is really, really interesting in how you pick your characters, because two characters has a connected villain. The character that I played was Duran the Swordsman. His kingdom was under attack, and he was defeated and pretty much was embarrassed, and he vowed to become one of the strongest knights, and he wanted to go after the Crimson Wizard. Now I picked Angela, who's also a mage magic wielding character as well. Now the Crimson Wizard also has a connection with her, because he is also manipulating her mother. And since she's a magic user, her mother eventually, which I don't really want to spoil, I guess I won't spoil it, but there is something going on between her and her mother, and something that the Crimson Wizard is doing is throwing everything off balance when it comes in her kingdom. So those two has a connection with each other. The Crimson Wizard, they have a common enemy. So a lot of their story is going to interweave and make a full story, opposed to pieces of stories, because you picking characters that really don't have any real connection with one another as far as a common goal or a common enemy. So that's the interesting part. This is why I say that it definitely does encourage you to do multiple playthroughs to find out who belongs together and everything. And Charlotte and the character Kevin, those two have a common enemy together. So it's definitely interesting. I'll leave it at that because I don't want to spoil too much. But if you're interested in that dynamic with the gameplay and the story, definitely look farther into that. So not only that, don't expect that really super intricate plot. Is not really like a Final Fantasy plot, but it's serviceable. It's enough to keep you hooked on, to find out what's going on and what is it leading up to. So that's another thing I advise. Now, the combat. I think the combat is where the meat of the Mana series is really held at. That's why everybody enjoyed the Mana series, is because like I said before, it's never really about the plot, the overarching plot. It's always been about the combat, the gameplay mechanics, and how everything just meshes together very well. So the combat had definitely received an overhaul compared to its older counterpart, of Trials of Mana. This time around, the game is very fast-paced, but the game is very simple to understand, especially at the very beginning of the game. The game is very, very simple because you're not really introduced to magic spells yet. You have very basic attacks, which is your light and heavy attacks, and even when you build your meter up, you have your super moves and everything. But the game starts all very simplistic, and this time around, the enemies also has a range marker, similar that you will see in like MMORPGs like Final Fantasy 14, where the enemy is about to cast a spell or perform a special attack, where it actually put a marker on the ground, a red marker to show you the range. So your goal is to proactively get out of that range so you won't get caught up into the special attack or spell, which I think is pretty cool. And I think a lot of action RPGs really need to get more into doing stuff like that, so you know the radius of the attack, so it don't seem like it's just so random, or have better visual cues that let you know, hey, I need to get out of this attack, as opposed to you just getting caught up in it and don't understand how you got caught up in it. And then not only that, just like the original, you're also able to switch between characters on the fly. Since the game is much more fast-paced than before, switching back and forth is definitely much more important than ever before. You can perform special attacks, you can switch from that character, move to the next character to capitalize on the attacks or to cast a spell. But dodging and movement is very, very important to this game, and they definitely put emphasis because now you have a dodge roll mechanic, something that the original game never had, but this game definitely has it. So dodging and maneuvering past your enemy's attack is definitely important in this game. Now, the biggest part of this game, that is really the core foundation of Trials of Mana Remake, and just it was also in the original, but they really put more emphasis on it, is definitely the class system. Now, what made the original so confusing with the class system, they really gave you vague descriptions of the classes. It was really hard, and you didn't really know what you were doing and how you were picking the classes and how you was able to create that synergy with your party. Now, in this game, they was definitely more, they put more emphasis and they was more descriptive with the class system, because essentially with the class system really opens the game up. Remember that I said before, earlier in the game, it's very simple. It feels like a bit button mashy at first. There's really not much to go off of or go by, but eventually once you start getting into the class system, the game begins to open itself up. When you run into the first Mana Stone, the Mana Stone will allow you to be able to pick your class. Now, the thing is, the class selection pretty much determines how difficult the game is going to be for you as a player moving forward, because once you pick a class, there's no turning back at this point. You got to pick your class, and once you have that defined class, that determines the roles your characters will be playing. So essentially, if you don't have any mages, if you didn't pick mages within your first playthrough, you're definitely going to have a rough time. You'll be depending more so on items than actual healing spells or stat buffs or debuffs of your enemies and everything. So you really have to think about how you do this. This is where the creativity comes in, where everybody has a different experience and a different playthrough, because there's a lot of when the game had released, there was a lot of YouTubers and players of Trials of Mana Remake who actually uploaded their personal builds, because you can be able to create class builds in this game, because class synergy is very important. Because once you pick your class, you can determine if you want your melee class to be more defense, or you want your melee class to be much more in the offensive area with less defense. Then with your mages, you can select whether you want one of your mages to be more of a stat booster or healer, or you can have one of your mages choose between a stat buffer, healer, or use damage magic and everything. So you really have to pick wisely of how you want to go down your class branches and down their path, because that would determine how difficult the game is going to be. Because if you don't have the right build, when you come across certain bosses or certain enemies, you won't have that class, that's will be able to do very well against particular enemies, specifically the bosses. That's where it really comes into play. So it's like a give or take type of mechanic, because you pick one class, you're going to be missing out for skipping out on the other class. So that's where you really have to focus. So team synergy is definitely important. And then as you get closer to the end of the game, you have advanced classes. Now with the advanced classes, in order to unlock the advanced class, you have to find this rare drop. is this item that drops from a specific enemy, and you would have to go and pretty much travel. Once the game opens up even more, you have to go around and travel to find these rare drops in order for each character. Each character has their own specific drop. Once you get that drop, then you're able to turn in those requirements in order to get that last final class. Now, I know some people may get, you know, like frustrated with it, or say, hey, why did they lock the final class behind something as, I guess you say, as, I guess, a time consuming as that? But don't worry. If you're lucky, or if you start doing it now, you can start grinding out those particular items as you progress through the game, so you really don't have to worry about it too much. But it really didn't take me long at all, and there's guides to simply, how to say, to get those items even faster, so you can check those out as well. And then also you have allocation of training points. Now you can take these points and you can use this to build up your character's specific abilities and traits, so you can spend a lot of time just trying to figure out what's the best path to go when you're allocating your training points. So you'll be spending a lot of time with that. This is why I said that the game really opens up, and the game is no longer simplistic. The game really does have some strategic aspects to it, some depth to it once you get to the first class stone. And man, I just love every last bit of it. Now, as far as the exploration in the game, it pretty much harpers back to the traditional old school JRPGs back in the 90s. The game definitely has a traditional overworld found in old school JRPGs, which, oh my god, it's just a breath of fresh air, man. Like, overworlds is something that I definitely miss, that you really don't find in most traditional JRPGs anymore, and I'm glad to see that it's back. You're able to travel on sea and also in the air. As you progress through the story, you get those different forms of transportation, and then especially when you get near the end of the game definitely opens up even more, where you're able to travel in the air to previous locations to, you know, finish up some of the quests that you may have missed out on, or to go back and grind and you know, level grind in particular areas, or like I said before, if you're looking for those rare items to drop so you can unlock your last and final advanced class. So that's definitely pretty cool. Now, the locations are very beautiful and it's vibrant real life. I like how they remade a lot of these older areas, and it feels so good to be able to see these areas like remade in with modern graphics and just in modern form. I just think it's pretty cool, and definitely exploration is encouraged, because you will find this cactus that would drop these particular items that actually help your party. So as you find each cactus that's hidden in each zone or each area, it unlocks special traits, special enhancements for your parties. And I believe that I was missing one more cactus. I believe I was missing one more cactus. And the thing is, I didn't bother to find the last cactus because I was pretty much at the end of the game. So I say I might as well finish the game. I also unlocked the advanced jobs as well. I got those items. I unlocked that. So that was a good thing on that part, is exploration was definitely encouraged. You had to search through every nook and cranny to make sure you wasn't missing any items, or find handy items that can help you, just to help your journey to go through a little bit smoother than it would normally would. Now, as for the voice acting is hit or miss, but damn, those summon sprites that you find, oh Jesus, the voice acting, it seemed like they just got somebody from the studio, a random person from the studio, and just said, hey, just put these headphones and mic on and just say these lines and you should be good to go, because dear God, it's horrible.
Take me with you, then we can all make her pay.
Now, as for the music is some of the best, and even the rearranged versions of the songs were nailed, and it has the original feel, and you can listen to the soundtrack all day, similar to what they did to the remake of Secret of Mana, which I'll talk about in another video. But essentially, man, this is pretty much it. This is an overall package that I believe that you would enjoy as a gamer and someone who's actually wanting to give RPGs a try. This is something that you can just dive right into and get accustomed to how it was and what it was like to play JRPGs back in the day. It has an old nostalgia feel, but they threw in some modern, touches to it, a facelift to it, for you to actually get in there and actually say, hey, this is really not a bad game. And I think this is a good entry point for those of you who never played any of the Mana games, or is looking to just get into the RPG genre or just play JRPGs in general and just trying to get into it, this is a perfect starting point. This is a perfect entry point, because after you play that, you'll pretty much want to try it and see what the other Mana games were like, because they recently re-released a HD version of Legend of Mana for the Nintendo Switch, and I believe the other platforms as well. You can test it out. They remade Secret of Mana. You can check that out, and they also have the Trials of Mana collection. So there's other ways you can be able to get your hands on the older titles after you play this one, and trust me, you would not be disappointed. Like I said before, don't expect Devil May Cry type gameplay. Don't expect Final Fantasy VII game remake gameplay. This is just an old 90s JRPG that still keeps everything intact that you know and love of JRPGs back in the 90s, and he just gave it just an upgrade. So don't expect something too different or too modern, but it's just enough to say, hey, you know what, this is pretty interesting. And even though I wasn't born or I wasn't into JRPGs back in the 90s, I can definitely see why players have really enjoyed this series. So definitely give it a try. Give it a go. Trust me, you would not be disappointed. But that pretty much wraps up this video. I really enjoyed Trials of Mana. This is definitely what a remake is supposed to be like. It keeps all the things that you love about the original, and all it does is just give everything a facelift, make everything meet modern standards. It doesn't need to go out of its way to change everything. If they want to do something different, they could add on to it, add different things to enhance the original experience, but they don't need to change the core foundation of what made that original, such a lovable experience to begin with. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below. What do you think about Trials of Mana Remake? What was your first Mana game that got you into the series? And if you're new to the Mana series, would you consider giving this game a try after hearing my thoughts on this? Definitely your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit the like button. Also hit the subscribe button, because it really helps me out. I really appreciate the love that you guys have been sending me throughout all my recent videos. I'm doing really good because you guys have been showing just so much support, and I appreciate it. So if you want to stay informed with more JRPG news and just content in general, hit that bell to be notified. This is MugenLord signing off. I'll see you game fiends later. Peace out.